The silence in Officer Murphy's patrol car was deafening as he processed what my niece Emma had just told him. He stared at the deed in his hands, then at Brenda the Lake Enforcer Hutchinson, who was currently discovering that her emergency 911 call had just backfired spectacularly. "Ma'am," Murphy said slowly, "you're telling me you called the police to report trespassing on property that she owns." Brenda's face cycled through shades of red I didn't know existed in nature. She stood there in her official HOA patrol vest, clutching her walkie-talkie like a security blanket, while the reality of her situation sank in. "That's impossible," she shrieked, her voice hitting that special frequency reserved for demanding refunds at Whole Foods. "This is community lake property. I've been managing it for 3 years." Emma smiled that sweet, innocent smile that had gotten her out of trouble since she was 5. "Actually, I inherited it from my grandmother last month. Every square inch of the lake and 100 feet of shoreline." Murphy looked at Brenda like she'd just claimed to own the moon. "Ma'am, you've been managing someone else's private property without permission. That's called trespassing." I leaned against my fishing chair, watching the woman who'd spent the entire summer terrorizing my family discover that karma has a sense of humor. But let me back up and tell you how we got here, because this story begins 3 months ago when I made the apparently criminal decision to take my niece fishing at our family lake. Picture this. Emma had just inherited our family's lake cabin from her grandmother, 25 acres of pristine wilderness with a private lake that had been in our family for 60 years. We'd been coming here every summer since Emma was little, and now it was officially hers. The cabin sat on the edge of Lakewood Estates, a pretentious subdivision where every house looked like it was designed by someone who thought rustic charm meant adding fake log siding to a McMansion. Most of the residents were city folk who'd moved to the country and immediately decided they needed to suburbanize it. Enter Brenda Hutchinson, HOA president and part-time destroyer of peaceful fishing trips. Brenda was the kind of woman who probably practiced her "I need to speak to your manager" voice in the mirror every morning. Mid-50s, with the kind of silver hair that screamed "I peaked at the PTA," and the dead-eyed stare of someone who'd found her calling in making other people's lives miserable, she appeared at our dock on a Saturday morning like a khaki-clad harbinger of doom, clipboard in hand and wearing what I can only describe as a suburban ranger uniform, pressed cargo shorts, a polo shirt with some kind of official-looking patch, and hiking boots that had never seen actual dirt. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice carrying that special authority that comes from years of terrorizing retail workers. "I'm Brenda Hutchinson, HOA president and lake safety coordinator. You can't fish here." Emma looked up from her fishing rod, confused. "Can't fish where? This is community lake property. Fishing requires a permit and HOA approval." I set down my coffee and really looked at this woman. "Community lake property. Lakewood Estates Community Lake. I manage all recreational activities. You're trespassing on HOA property." The woman thought our private family lake was somehow community property. I was beginning to understand why Emma's grandmother had always muttered about those subdivision people. "Brenda," I said slowly, "this is private property. My family has owned this lake for 60 years. Her smile had all the warmth of a tax audit. "Sir, I've been lake safety coordinator for 3 years. I know every inch of community property. This lake belongs to Lakewood Estates, and you have documentation of that." "I don't need documentation. I'm the HOA president." She turned and marched away, leaving us sitting on our own dock wondering if we'd accidentally stumbled into an alternate reality where property laws didn't apply. The first violation notice appeared on our cabin door the next morning. Unauthorized recreational activity on community property. Immediate cessation required. It was signed by Brenda and included a list of infractions that would have made the Department of Natural Resources proud. Unlicensed fishing, unauthorized watercraft usage, we had a canoe, unpermitted dock utilization, and my personal favorite, aesthetic disruption of community lake harmony. Emma called the HOA office, thinking there might be some misunderstanding, Lakewood Estates HOA. This is Brenda speaking. Hi, this is Emma. I got a violation notice about fishing at the lake. Yes, you were engaged in unauthorized recreational activities on community property. That's a clear violation of our lake usage policies. But it's my lake. I own it, miss. The lake belongs to Lakewood Estates. I've been managing it for 3 years. You can't just claim to own community property. I have the deed. I don't care what paperwork you think you have. The lake is under HOA jurisdiction, and I'm the lake safety coordinator. Emma hung up, realizing she was dealing with someone who'd confused being HOA president with being a federal park ranger. Over the next month, Brenda launched what she called comprehensive lake enforcement. Every weekend, like clockwork, she'd appear at our dock with her clipboard, documenting our violations like she was building a case for the EPA. She photographed our fishing equipment. She measured the distance between our dock and the shoreline. She even brought what appeared to be a water testing kit, though I'm pretty sure she had no idea how to use it. Unauthorized fishing activities are disrupting the lake ecosystem, she announced one morning, pointing at Emma's fishing rod like it was a weapon of mass destruction. This operation is violating community environmental standards. It's catch and release, Brenda. And it's our lake. I don't care what you call it. It's impacting community water quality. The woman had apparently appointed herself the neighborhood's environmental protection agency, complete with imaginary authority and very real delusions of grandeur. But Brenda's real genius was in the escalation. She started patrolling the lake in a kayak, wearing an official-looking vest and carrying a whistle. She'd paddle up to our dock and demand to see our lake usage permits. When we ignored her, she started calling the county about illegal fishing operations on community property. When they told her to file a civil complaint, she called the state environmental agency about unlicensed recreational activities. When they laughed at her, she called the police. Officer Murphy arrived on a Sunday afternoon, probably expecting to deal with a standard neighbor dispute. Instead, he found Brenda standing on our dock, pointing at Emma's fishing rod like she was reporting a crime in progress. Officer, these people are trespassing on community lake property, she explained, her voice carrying that special urgency reserved for reporting actual emergencies. I've documented weeks of unauthorized recreational activities. Murphy looked at our peaceful fishing setup, then at Brenda's official vest and clipboard, then back at us. Ma'am, what exactly is illegal about fishing? They don't have permits. This is community property under HOA management. I'm the lake safety coordinator. Murphy nodded politely and walked over to Emma. Miss, is this your property? Yes, and I have the deed right here. Emma pulled out a manila folder she'd started carrying after Brenda's first visit. Murphy studied the documents, the original deed, the inheritance papers, the property survey. Everything clearly showed that Emma owned the lake and surrounding land. Ma'am, he said to Brenda, this is private property. She owns the lake. Brenda's face went through several interesting color changes. That's impossible. I've been managing this lake for 3 years. I know every inch of community property. You've been managing someone else's private lake without permission. That's called trespassing. But here's the beautiful twist that made everything worth it. While Murphy was explaining trespassing laws to Brenda, Emma mentioned that she'd been curious about Brenda's 3 years of lake management. So she'd done some research. It turns out Brenda had been treating our family lake as her personal HOA project for years, organizing community fishing events, charging residents for lake access fees, and even selling annual lake permits to people who wanted to use what she thought was HOA property. She'd been running a business off our family's private lake without our knowledge or permission. Emma had documentation of everything: the permits Brenda had sold, the fees she'd collected, the official events she'd organized. Brenda had been essentially squatting on our property and monetizing it. Murphy called this criminal trespass with commercial intent. The best part: the story spread through Lakewood Estates faster than gossip at a church potluck. By the next morning, everyone knew that Brenda, the 3-year lake safety coordinator, had been illegally managing someone else's private property. The residents who'd paid for lake permits demanded refunds. The HOA board discovered that Brenda had been collecting fees for services she had no authority to provide. The local newspaper picked up the story. HOA president charged with trespassing on private lake she claimed to manage. Brenda resigned from the HOA the following week, right after the homeowners voted to pursue legal action against her for misrepresentation of HOA authority. She also faced criminal charges for trespassing and fraud. Apparently, selling permits for property you don't own is frowned upon by the legal system. Emma and I still fish at our lake every weekend, and we're planning to build a proper boat launch now that we don't have to worry about Brenda's lake management. The bays are biting beautifully, and we're thinking about stocking it with trout. Sometimes, we get visitors from Lakewood Estates who want to apologize for Brenda's behavior. Last week, a couple stopped by to ask if they could fish from our dock occasionally. I told them yes, but they'd need to get permission from the actual owner Emma. We framed Brenda's last violation notice right next to Emma's deed. It's a nice reminder that owning property means more than us having the right paperwork. It means being able to enjoy it without interference from self-appointed lake coordinators. The moral of the story: know your boundaries before you try to enforce them, and if you're going to claim authority over someone's property, maybe make sure it's not actually their property first. Brenda learned that lesson the hard way. I just wish I could have been there when she tried to explain to the judge why she thought she could sell permits for a lake she didn't own. Some people never learn that being HOA president doesn't make you the monarch of every body of water in the neighborhood. But hey, at least the fish are happy.